so many things inside the wing that's been modeled, and basically.
The Flight Sim show is back, and it's bigger and better than it ever was before. With over 1,800 attendees and nearly 40 exhibitors attending, this has been the largest UK show of flight simulation ever, with Just Flight's really breaking the scale of European shows. Once again, I managed to get myself an interview with some of the largest developers in the flight simulator scene, asking them the questions that you, as a community, wanted to know. And with that, let's get right into the show. Laminar Research first. Today we take a look at their upcoming X-Plane 11.30 update, which aims to break the boundaries of their flight simulator through the use of a new particle effect system being implemented, as well as the backend for Vulkan to be added in the near future. This will give us a new scale of realism that you have never seen before. Over to Philip for the interview.
Cool, so thank you very much for doing this for us, Philip from Laminar Research. So, last year you talked a lot about your VR and your 11.20 update and what it would bring to the simulator. What have been the biggest changes to X-Plane 11 in this past year since the last Flight Sim show?
Well, we have the VR system now out for everyone. People are using it. We support all the major headsets, the Vive, the Oculus, the Samsung headset, which has a really great resolution, and people love using X-Plane in VR. But at the same time, of course, we have other people talking to us like, oh, you shouldn't focus on this VR fad, you should go down to the real basic features like better physics, better joystick support and stuff like that. So 11.30, which is in private beta right now and will become public, I think, within the week, is very focused on physics and features. So we have a lot of flight model improvements from Austin with regards to prop wash, with regards to tail draggers. So especially the prop wash will be a lot better with regards to ground effect. So many people were complaining about the ground effect in 11.20. That has been vastly improved. We have some changes coming in systems, and we have this whole new joystick UI where you can do the response curves for every single joystick axis. You can configure the dead zone, you can configure the response curve, whether it's linear or whether it's like an interpolated curve. You can save the joystick axis, so it's a setting per axis per aircraft. So you can make a setting like for the 172, I want my joystick to react like this, and if I fly a helicopter, I want to react it like this. You can save those profiles. You can share the profile with other people, and we got the new particle effect system in 11.30. So this is going to look great. It changes the heat flow, it changes the contrast, it changes the water spray effects. So I think 11.30 will be great from the visual perspective with the particles, and I think the hardcore simmers will be very happy with the physics improvements.
Sounds good. So when it comes to the Autogen library and the scenery, how do you guys plan to broaden and introduce new specific sceneries such as South America, Asia and Africa? So we've seen updates to London, we've seen updates to Las Vegas.
Right.
How will you do the rest of the world in the long run?
Well, this is two different things. The updates for the cities, that's not Autogen. This is specifically tailored city scenery, and we continue doing that. We have more cities in the pipeline, not only in the US but also in Asia. We have cities outside the US in the pipeline, and the question of Autogen is a little different because the Autogen system of X-Plane 11 is very open and very flexible. So I think it is at this point really up to the add-on developer community to embrace the X-Plane Autogen system and make more variety, because X-Plane is not limited to two Autogens. Right now we have the US Autogen and the European Autogen, but it's really not limited to that. You could have one compile running a completely different autogen library that an add-on maker could make.
Okay, so you want more of the community integration rather than having yourself like
I don't think, so we will continue to make cities, yes, but right now I don't think we have an own effort underway to make regionalized autogen for like South America or Asia. No, that's not something we are working on right now.
Okay, so explain system requirements. Sometimes they can be quite high in comparison to other simulators. As such, do you see this as hindering some users from playing your simulator?
I don't see it as hindering because with the X-Plane 11 UI, it's very simple to set lower settings with your graphics. I know some people are upset that they don't have all the different sliders for all the different settings like they had in X-Plane 10, but what we made sure in X-Plane 11 is that when you put the quality slider in one position, that it sets the settings in a way that makes sense for a slower computer or a faster computer. And with X-Plane 1130, people are going to see big frame rate improvement already because X-Plane 1130 is not Vulkan yet, but we are in the middle of rebuilding the stack for Vulkan, and you are going to see the benefits of that with the new shader compiler and other improvements in the pipeline in X-Plane 1130 already. So even though it's not Vulkan, X-Plane 1130 runs at a higher frame rate already than 20, and I think with Vulkan it's going to be even better than that.
So with that as well, the urban legend, is it true that if your sim is not running at 20 frames per second, the simulator slows down in the back ends?
Well, that's not a legend, that is exactly how it works, and that comes from an FAA requirement. So that came into X-Plane many years ago for certification requirements from the Federal Aviation Administration.
Oh, so it was not a thing you guys planned out, it's something that the FAA actually kind of made you implement into the simulator?
Exactly.
Okay. So for more technically gifted users, so when it comes to developing aircraft, will we see N3 engines officially added to the simulator and in PlaneMaker? So modern jetliners like the A350 and the 787 both have N3 combustion chambers. Yes. So will this be something that will be reflected in the simulator in the long run?
All right. Let me into a secret. Right. Right now in X-Plane 11. Prior to 1120, we don't even have a real N1 and N2. They're kind of N1 and N2 up until X-Plane 1120 are kind of fake because they are coupled with a power function. And only in X-Plane 1130 they are physically coupled through the airflow that goes through the turbine blades. So I think the question is, when will N1 and N2 work perfectly? And the answer for that is X-Plane 1130, because now the physics for the two spools actually work correctly. And now that Austin has this, I think it should be pretty easy for Austin to add a third spool, an N3 spool, to it, which was not really possible previously. So I think that the two-spool jet engines are going to be much more realistic in certain situations, like the drift down from altitude when the engine is mostly windmilling. It behaves differently than when it's under power during climb. You're going to see that in 1130 already, and I think from there on, adding an N3 spool shouldn't be too hard.
Sounds good. So, is there also the possibility of WED incorporating the inclusion of sounds, such as ground airports and nature?
This is something, so basically you want FMOD sound triggers in the scenery, like when you taxi by something, like you taxi by the machine shop and you hear people working in it, or you fly by a wind turbine and you hear the wind turbine. It's not something we have in 1130 right now, but it's definitely something we can do with FMOD. So it's not on the short term, you're not going to get it next week, but it's definitely something we are aware of and want to give to scenery developers.
So, FSX famously used SimConnect, which allowed modders to interact directly with the simulator at all levels, from weather to aircraft. While XUI PC is available as a freeware, is there anything that we've built into the simulator, if not already available?
Well, I think the SDK that is in the simulator already is far more comfortable to use than FSUI-PC ever was, because what you needed to do with FSUI-PC, you would need to go look in a big table, find the thing you were looking for, like landing light switch or gear lever or whatever, and then it came up with a pointer with a long number, and then you had to remember that number, figure out the offset, and use that. And I think X-Plane is much more straightforward, much more simple in that you don't have to look up a number, but everything is named. The landing lights lever is something like sim, cockpit, switches, landing lights. It's a string you can remember, you can read. And X-Plane has about 3,000 or 4,000 of those data refs that you can just look up by name, search by name, and get the variable. And so the X-Plane SDK, I think, is much easier to program than FSU-IPC ever was, because it's more intuitive. And people like Carsten Linker from Fly with Lua have put something on top of that SDK, because not every person can program C, but it's very easy to write Lua, and I think something with Fly with Lua makes that very accessible to non-programmers.
So, can we see the adoption of seasons and weather improvements in the X-Plane release cycle? So currently we're only flying in the summer for most of the world. Will we see snow? Will we see weather updates?
So you were asking about this X-Plane release cycle, and I think the answer for this X-Plane release cycle is no. I think the focus for X-Plane 11 right now is to get Vulkan to you. So Vulkan will definitely be in X-Plane 11. That's not going to be 12 feature. This is going to be in the X-Plane 11 run. And I think with Vulkan and X-Plane 11, we will get the room to grow, to add more features, more graphical features, and we will get the experience running Vulkan on users' machines with NVIDIA cards and AMD cards and Intel graphics and so on. So sorry to disappoint you for X-Plane 11. I don't think seasons will come from us for X-Plane 11, but I think with Vulkan we get the room to grow, to implement weather features and season features better than you could do with textures only. Because right now you would have to like quadruple all the textures for the 4 seasons, and I don't think that's really feasible. I think the modern way to do it, shader based, is the proper way to do it, and that's the road we're going down.
And most important final question of all, will we ever see a change in the aircraft contrails? Surely 2 years on, you guys will know how to change the thick black smoke spewing out the aircraft engines into small white puffy water vapor clouds.
Alright, this ever, I can replace the ever question with next week, because as of X-Plane 1130, the contrails are no longer handled by the old puff code, but they are handled by the particle system. So with X-Plane 1130, you can get the contrails out of the particle system. You can configure them with the data rest, like they can be different when it's cold, or when the troposphere temperature is colder or warmer. The contrails can get bigger, more fluffy, or smaller. And I think the X-Plane 11 particle, X-Plane 11.3 particle system is going to make much better contrails than we've ever seen.
It's finally happening.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Newcomers Flying Development Studio are showcasing their ever-popular mobile flight simulator, Infinite Flight. Their first show in the UK, they had a lot to talk about in terms of the history of their platform, and with that, we have Laura speaking with us today. I would also like to apologise to FDS, as well as you guys watching, for the audio quality in this one. Interference from the neighbouring stands did take away from this, and as a result, next year I will be investing in a proper camera and microphone to get proper interviews in.
Lauren, thank you very much for doing this with us today. So, where did the idea of Infinite Flight come about, and who decided to start development towards a mobile flight simulator?
So it's a multi-stage process. We started back in 2004 when I was in engineering school in Paris, France. I started working on a little project that turned into a simulation for airplanes. And then after that I moved to California to work for NVIDIA, where Steve, my co-founder, was working at the time. And we kind of decided to join forces to make a product out of this problem game.
This goes back to all the way down to 2004.
Sorry?
This goes back to all the way to 2004, over like a long...
This was in 2000. So I moved to California in 2006. So the project was about 2 years old. In 2010, we decided to join forces. The plan was to develop for PC initially. So we have a PC version internally working with developing still. But yeah, the plan was to work on the PC version. And then around that time, Microsoft had sent us several forms for their Windows
would you say is the biggest reason to choose Infinite Flight over other mobile sims, such as X-Plane Mobile?
I mean, if we're comparing to other mobile sims, I would say our community. The multiplayer system and the diversity of aircraft that we have, the multiplayer is really the big emphasis of the project. We've got people playing together here. Like they gathered to the show, and then they're just playing on a form of flashlight. They gather together. They have a controller somewhere. I don't know if they're here, but they're somewhere else. So that's really a key point. That you're not flying alone. You're flying with other people. That's super exciting.
Okay. So what would you say to like the traditional PC flight simmers who've maybe not given the mobile flight sim a chance? What reason could you give to tempt them into Infinite Flight and mobile flight simulators?
Well, I would say two things. One is that I used to be a PC flight simmer. I played Flight Unlimited, I played FSX, I was a race tester for FSX.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I liked this stuff. I interviewed Microsoft actually before I started this. But it's about the flying fix. You know, when I was just starting development, I stopped playing FSX because all I needed was not to be in a full cockpit, it's just the feeling of flying that I got even from the low quality model and like basic terrain. It was enough for me to get that flying thing going. And the second thing is, we're not really competitors to the other PC sims. It's more of an alternative when you're not in front of your PC. So, for example, you're going away, with your family, you have some time, for yourself. Just pop your phone, get connected, and play with other people. Alternatively, if you're in your house, you're on your couch, the movie's over, you got 10, 15 minutes before you go to bed. Instead of going to your room and starting your PC, it'll take you 10 minutes to get a movie done. Just pop your phone and start playing.
Okay. So it's a lot more like handheld, little compact, and it's with you all the time.
And to get, I think people realize that it gives them this it's like a craving for flying. And you get it satisfied by flying, whatever it is.
Okay. So what feature are you most proud of in Infinite Flight? And is there anything that really differentiates from the rest of the market as well? So what is the biggest feature of Infinite Flight that you say would be getting the people into the sim?
I'd say it's the multiplayer. Definitely when we have thousands of people playing together on the same server, with the controllers, lecturing people, it's pretty exciting. It's something that exists on platforms, it's not on mobile, and we have 24/7 activity on those servers. It's pretty amazing. And I would say the second thing is just the rendering itself. We have airlines retweet pictures that our users post with these little pictures. So it's a good testament to the quality of the rendering.
So would you ever consider implementing virtual reality elements to Infinite Flight thanks to the availability of platforms like Google Cardboard and similar, and the numerous tools available on iPhone as well?
So we're talking about this the issue is that we need to render the game at a very high frame rate, and on mobile phones today, even going to 60 frames per second, it just kills the phone. It gets really high, the battery dies quickly, and especially Android, the frame rate's going to drop because it's going to overheat, it's going to throttle down the frequency of the CPU and GPU. There's nothing you can do about that. And on iOS, there's not much that's possible at this point. What would we hoping for is for Apple to come to this market with something that's slightly, just like what Apple would do.
Yeah.
It would work just right away. But yeah, unless they do that, we're kind of stuck. And we've tried just going on the PC, just trying on the PC version, just the setup to make things work. I've moved up to Windows 10, Creative Edition, setting up the drivers, and yeah, it's too problematic.
Yeah. And so with Infinite Flight, so about a year ago, released a whole world available to Flight Simulator. And so a lot of changes have happened to Simulator, say where it was 2 years ago, which was small regions, to whole world, big jets, multiplayer flying. So what could we see in Infinite Flight for next 6 and 12 months? What is the future for your simulator?
I mean, we don't really talk about features in advance because I recently made a post on our forum about that. The reason why we don't say when dates come out, mostly because things can happen. But as I said in the presentation we did a couple hours ago, an important point is that anything that's missing from the sim that people say is missing, the instruments, the buildings, the clouds, we're working on. There's
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
REMEX Software are next, with their growing in popularity dead-stick bush flight simulator. With nearly 2 years in development behind it, and the game itself being revealed at last year's show, today we speak to Chris again, who takes us through the simulator.
Thank you very much for doing this with us today, Chris.
You're welcome.
For those who don't know what dead stick is, or where it came about, give us a brief history about the simulator and what the main focus of it will be.
Okay, so the big thing about dead stick is we're trying to simulate the experience of being a pilot rather than simulating the aircraft. So the way we've done that is it's all first person, so you can get out, you can walk around the aircraft, do your pre-flight checks, and then with that we've got a whole career mode that's built around it. So the idea is that you're trying to earn money delivering cargo from A to B, and then you can use that to upgrade the aircraft and maintain it along the way. So it's almost like a survival experience where you're trying to keep the plane alive rather than something.
So bush flight is by and large VFR. Given that flight sims struggle with true pilotage because of limited time and processing power that needs to create landmarks and identifying features, what does your game do to overcome this as an obstacle for most simulators would have, in order to make it necessary to create a proper bush flight simulator with a degree of realism?
So the big thing for us is we're not trying to simulate the whole world, we're trying to do a small area. Relatively small area. Because we're doing a small area, we can focus on the graphical fidelity. So we're not using effective textures. Everything is meshes. Everything is modeled, every blade of grass and every rock, and that really allows us to drill into the detail for adding those landmarks piloted and things like weather effects using full volumetric clouds to make it fully immersive.
So how big will the map be when it comes into its final release?
The current version you can see here today, the Southern Island is 2,500 square miles, and we'll be adding another Northern Island of the same size as that. So that's what we'll be taking into early access, and then we'll look at expanding it from there, as well as looking at completely different locations, places like Papua New Guinea, as it packs beyond that.
Sounds good. So, just so you're trying to make a game with a lot more personality than a traditional flight simulator, and a huge part of this plane's unique temperament in real life and the quirks and documented oddities means that these aircraft don't control in the same way as you find like in your commercial aircraft and lovely light aircraft as well. So, to what extent will this personality be present in Dead Stick?
I think just that topic generally was a big thing that inspired me to make this. You know, when I do my pilot's license, I learned that actually just flying the plane is kind of the easy bit, but there's a lot that goes on around that, doing all your pre-flight checks and also how you plan your routes to make sure that you fly safely. So that a big part of that was, you know, we really want to get that personality into the aircraft, down to like the keyring moving or the aerials wobbling, and down to all the individual avionics and things that's simulated. So yeah, it's a big part of it. It's making it, I keep saying today, trying to make it feel like a living and breathing aircraft, not that they actually live or breathe, but you know what I mean? So yeah, that's really important, and we want it to feel like it's your aircraft and that it's your job to look after and maintain it as you go.
So obviously there will be a map for navigation, but how close will this be to like a real-life sectional map, and how do you plan on emulating this in the simulator?
It's an interesting question. We've got our own development version we've used, and it looks a lot like a US sectional map. But obviously, wherever you go in the world, there's different chart styles. So I think we still have to put some artwork on our side to figure out exactly how we want to look. We certainly want it to feel like a sectional chart and feel like the iconography and everything that we use makes sense. So yeah.
So to answer that last question, flying in advance generally means a lot of planning, like get your routing sorted out and getting your directions sorted. So given that your map is fictional, how do you plan to give the players the resources necessary to plan a flight in terms of landing areas, routes, weather and emergency preparation?
So we've got a map screen which we haven't showed off yet, partly because we need to still figure out the exact chart style, but essentially that is your hub. That's where you go from selecting your jobs to planning your routes. So you go onto your map screen, there'll be airfields on there, and each one has got a list of jobs available that you can select. Then when you click on it, you can drag out routes, which creates a plug for you. That transfers to the plug inside the aircraft, which you can pull up on your lap at any time to see your waypoints. So it's all done through one map screen, and you've got all your weather and everything on there. So yeah, we try and integrate it. If you're familiar with using flight planning software for VFR flying, then it's very similar to that kind of thing.
And so, last question is, how in-depth and defined will collision detection and damage modelling be? So, will the aircraft be soft body, or will it be... Yeah, so will the aircraft be soft body? And likewise, when it comes to wear and tear, how does this work within the simulator?
It's not, I wouldn't call it soft body, so it's all rigid bodies, but when at the point of a collision, we use a semi-soft body system, is the best way to describe it, to deform specific areas. So areas know about, you know, their structure and their integrity, and then based around that, we use a dynamic mesh deformation system to deform and crumple the aircraft around it. So it's not like we're taking a model and then swapping it out for, say, you damage a wing, we swap it out for damage wing model. We're actually calculating and damaging the wing around you. We're not using full soft body physics for that, because there's stability issues there. When you go fast, they might start looking like jelly or not feel.
It's like fluttering, but at the extreme levels.
Exactly. So yeah, we try to find a nice trade-off there between what's realistic.
So when would you say we could see the simulator on our screens for us to play in the long run?
We're obviously intending to have it out about now. We've had to do a lot more work than was anticipated on the terrain system, streaming system, to do the fidelity we've got to the size of the world. We've solved those problems now, but it set us back a little bit, so we're looking at early part of next year now.
In terms of modding, what kind of modding process will we see? So will you guys be releasing an APK and whatnot? And likewise, will modding be solely on the Steam Workshop, or will we maybe see like other websites with modding capabilities, like get add-ons for DeadStick?
It's a bit too early to say yet. Modding is going to be hugely important, so we do want to open it up in Steam Workshop. That will certainly be the first thing that we look at, and trying to create a tool set which allows people to do interesting things. We certainly want to create it flexible so people can create different vehicle types and have fun with it. At the same time, we want to look at a more formal API for third-party developers. So they're all things that we need to explore, but we don't have answers to them yet. It's definitely something that we'll look at.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Flight Sim Labs again, and a bit of a rollercoaster year for them at that. But also a year of redemption too, with some rather fantastic Airbus aircraft now released, as well as some more in the works. We got a chance to speak to our favourite Greek developer today, Lefteris Kalamaras, for a scoop of what's to come.
So, Lefteris, thank you very much for doing this for me today. So, a year of redeeming for Flight Sim Labs. 1 year ago when we interviewed you, you guys were in the process of finalising your A319, as well as getting your aircraft ready for Prepare 3D version 4.
That's right.
So, what else has happened in the last year of FS Labs in terms of developments and nothing else in particular?
Well, we've developed an update for the 320, and then the 319 came out, and we're very happy with the response. Lots of thousands of customers bought it, so the response is overwhelming. We're very happy with it, and we're now developing a new product for the A321. So,
sounds good. So when will we see the A321 arrive for flight simulators, and potentially other variants of the aircraft as well, such as Sharklets, Neos, engine types? What timeline do you have in the future for your A320X?
the A321 will come out, we hope, in the next few months. We're working on it, as you can see. I don't know if you took pictures of the or videos of our monitors over there in the computer that we have on the desk. It's coming out within the next few months, so it's still in development, and our early beta testing is showing very promising results. It has new features that we have talked about in our forum, and some new features that we haven't talked about. So we're very excited to have those come out as well.
Any sneak peeks of new features?
I'm sorry?
Any ideas of new features? Anything that's you've not said yet, which you might be trying to say?
You're looking for exclusives here.
Of course.
Well, I can tell you that there's some VATSIM stuff coming out, and we're working with some online providers to do more integrated online flying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, when you guys have finished with the A320 series, what will you be doing next? Will we see an A350 or even an A340 coming from you guys?
I'm going to tell you this, it's going to be an A3 something. I hope that answers the question.
And also, like, how long do you think you'll be developing the A320 series for? So, when do you think will be like the end line for this? How many years would you say you'll be doing this
I don't see
for?
an end of life for that product, because the aircraft is so much in development, and we have so much to do still. There's Sharklets, there's the Neos, there's the new FMGC versions that are coming out, so we have a lot of work still. We have the cockpit version, we have the professional versions, so there's still lots to come.
And at the very least, could you say if you could one day maybe incorporate an Airbus widebody in the future rather than these narrow-body jets?
Very interesting question. I think that falls back to the A3XX product that we talked about before.
Sounds good. And I guess the next one is, what was the reason to including a tomato shade preset in your aircraft? This is something we've not seen any other developer do. What inclined you to add tomato shades built into the aircraft?
I think it adds to the immersion. So whenever people look at it and realize that we have involved this and included it in our product, we're very happy that we've preset it into the product, and so they appreciate that we put it in rather than them having to do it themselves.
Okay. So very community oriented and guides, kind of like not a way of keeping yourself from the customers, but actually bringing their ideas into like what they want to see within the simulator.
We listen to our customers, so yeah, we hope that everything that we added is going to excite them even more.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the interview.
ORBX are back, and better than ever before. Announcing a new product at the show, Drawyah South England, we've got a couple of minutes to speak to John Vanama about the progress of this, as well as a couple other products in the pipeline yet to be announced.
So, thank you very much again for doing this with us, John.
That's all right.
So, last time I interviewed you a year ago, you talked about your latest releases coming onto ORBX, as well as some X-Plane developments that were in the progress of being made. What have been the biggest changes in these last 365 days?
Well, we've introduced a new technology called True Earth, and you've no doubt seen Netherlands.
Yes.
We've released for B3D and Aerofly FS2. Will soon come out for X-Plane. So that's where the company, we're making a shift to photoreal regions, incredible detail, hundreds of BI models. Today we're announcing True Earth Great Britain South.
Oh yes.
So we're going to continue that True Earth series all the way through the UK. And again, that's going to be for all three platforms as well.
So you'll be doing FSX as well as P3D and X-Plane?
We won't be doing FSX because 32-bit sims can't handle the sheer amount of data that's being
right. So just be 64-bit simulators from the
Correct.
future.
Correct.
Okay, so you also mentioned last year as well that you also had teams developing OpenLC for both the African and Asian regions.
Yeah.
So what updates do you have on that, and when will we ever see them release?
Africa is about 80% done. It'll be out before Christmas. So all the textures have been finished. So there's hundreds of new unique land class textures. We're just basically finishing up the actual land class itself, which is being done by hand. It's quite a long process. That'll be out before Christmas.
Okay.
And then there's a bit of water coming and then we start on Asia after that.
Okay, so will we see any new airport releases for P3D and X-Plane, and even FSX, or will it now be a focus on regions for the next coming months?
Oh no, we're seeing lots of new airports. We just released Kiruna in Sweden, which is a triple back.
Oh yes.
That was released 3 days ago. We have about, in terms of new airports being worked on right now, it's probably about 24.
24?
Yeah. We've got there's plenty of stuff happening across all platforms. We're porting a lot of our P3D airports to X-Plane. So Turbulent, Greg from Turbulent Design is here. He's been porting Southampton, Shore, Cardiff. They're all going to be available in the next few weeks as well. So
sounds good. So yeah, what have happened to Australia? I mean, your first FTX region pack was Australia, and you also released the freeware AI aircraft pack many years ago as well.
Yes.
But other than those two, it's been very quiet for that part of the world.
Well, we have released. We released Gold Coast Airport only a few months ago. We have a few other Australian airports in the works that we can't talk about yet. We've just released Gisborne in New Zealand only a few weeks ago. So we're certainly still in the Southern Hemisphere, and we're about to break cover on Australia version 2, which is going to be absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, so you've now got a new update for it, which will rebuild the entire...
Australia, it's a Great Barrier Reef, Cityscape Melbourne, incredible coastlines, lots of really new great textures. So we're hoping to get out Christmas or New Year.
So Australia is coming, and it sounds like it's going to be big.
It's going to be amazing. Yeah. Olga Sandman's leading that project.
So will we also see scenery packs in more Central American cities as well, such as Minneapolis and Tennessee? So we see a lot of cities on the coast and major cities in the US and worldwide, but no love for the smaller US cities and airports.
We're doing city scenes all over the world and also the US. We're working on a city scene right now. It hasn't been announced yet, but it's going to be quite impressive. People will be very excited about that one. And we'll continue to do those all over the US. We're also going to release True Earth regions in the US starting next year. What we want to do is cover the entire US with regions and city scenes.
Okay, so when it comes to support from developers, how good is it from Lockheed Martin and Laminar Research when developing products, and who is the better source when it comes to developing?
Well, we have a very good relationship with Lockheed. I talk to Adam Reed on a regular basis, and we're part of the beta testing program. So that's a very solid relationship. I can also talk to the Laminar guys when we need to, Pencilbeck, and Marty's always very helpful. So, we tried, and I was in Germany last week visiting IPAX, so I talked to those guys as well. So we've got a pretty healthy relationship with the three sim makers at this stage.
with the loss of Flight Sim World and the Delta Games flight team essentially now non-existent, does this affect your stance on 32-bit simulator platforms such as FSX?
I think 32-bit simulators, we're seeing a migration of people away from 32-bit to 64-bit. We've seen FSX numbers decline in our own sales data, so it's less than 20% now. It's around about 18% of it.
Oh yes.
Whereas only a year ago it was about 28%. So that's been a 10% migration to P3D 64-bit in the last year alone.
So in that case, is it still worth developing for the 32-bit platforms, or is it now time for a sole focus to 64-bit, X11 and P3D?
Where we do an airport, and it's not a lot of work to make it FSX compatible, of course we make it FSX compatible, because 18% of our customers are still using that platform. So we want to look after them. And also, we're releasing region products that will still be compatible with FSX. So, the land class based regions, OpenLC, Australia, all of those are still working FSX.
So, through the last couple of months, you have definitely seen a community move towards the 64-bit platforms. So, I think that comes to the question as well. So, you now see that the simulator is now moving towards the 64-bit platform, and you see a lot less going towards FSX.
That's true. It's a natural progression, It's just, we're dealing with a lot more data here. We're talking about products that are, 30 to 90 gig in size. And you need that extra bandwidth to process that and deal with that.
So, big important question. Are you and Laminar Research, or more specifically, Austin Meyer, the best of friends yet? Or do you both still have your mutual disrespect for each other?
Well, I bumped into Marty last night over drinks, and he said, greetings from Austin. So, in a roundabout sort of way, we are talking to each other. Look, we're working with them. They're important to us. I think they enjoy the fact that ORBX has embraced their platform. So there's no need for an ongoing tit-for-tat type of scenario to continue.
And the other question from last year, did PayPal ever give you your money back?
They did.
They did?
It took 11 months.
11 months between final purchase and the money getting through to you.
So for 11 months, there was about 30,000 customers that we weren't paid for their purchase.
30,000?
So that was a big chunk of our business, and that's...
So I can imagine for a small company like yours as well, that's a lot of...
That's why we won't use them again. I just don't respect that company. So they had no reason to hold our money, and so we won't do business with them again. Simple as that.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, no problem at all.
Show hosts Just Flight are here with their plethora of general aviation and historic jetliner add-ons. Today they talk to us about their upcoming Works for X-Plane, as well as their take on where the balance of the community is heading in terms of simulator usage. Let's see what Martin and Richard have to say.
Alright, so thank you very much for doing this with us today. So, since the last Flight Sim show, you guys talked mainly about your transition from FSX to X11 and how you decided to start releasing products more towards that genre. So, what have been the biggest changes to Just Flight in the last year?
Yeah, I suppose X11 is the biggest, I suppose. It's been nearly a year since we released the Arrow 3. It's our first X-Plane release. Since then we've done maybe 5 or 6 new aircraft. They've been really popular, very well received. Yeah. So much like the industry in general, I think X11 is the biggest change.
Right, so as you mentioned, the Archer the Warrior 2, you said.
The new one?
The first one you released.
The first one was the Arrow 3.
Yeah, so you mentioned it's been about a year since you've done the Arrow 3 as your first release, and you've now got maybe around 10-15 products now ported over to X11. So how different is the development process between FSX, P3D and X11?
Very different, really. We have an external team that does most of the X-Plane stuff, so we tend to do the FSX and prepared version. And once that's completed, re-released, bug fixed and everything else, then it tends to go to the team that dedicated to X-Plane conversions. They make use of a lot of the textures, but a lot of the coding is done from fresh. So it's quite a different simulator.
So when will we start to see some of your more advanced jetliners, such as the AC-111 or even the VC-10, make its way onto X11, or will you guys be sticking with general aviation for the meantime?
No, we are trying to get to bigger stuff.
2019, imagine there'll be an Arrow.
Yeah, so the next one's probably going to be the Duchess, and then maybe the Archer 3, because they're both fairly simple to get them out of the way. But yeah, we are tending to get to the bigger stuff like the VC-10 and the 747. So yeah, it's certainly coming. Yeah.
So, you guys are basically the only developers at this time that are still working with Aerofly FS. So, what do you guys see in that platform that others may have missed, and how much of your developments do you put towards Aerofly?
Currently, not so much at the moment, but it is something we're going to be getting back into. But I mean, it's ORBX is supporting Aerofly, so it's a good solid thing. It's not as detailed and as complex as others, but very visually satisfying and fun to use.
It serves a slightly different market as well.
And it's also, because it's a way of accessing the mobile market, tablets, and we've sold us up through Aerofly to tablet.
Yeah, we saw good sales when we did content for Aerofly FS, the original.
Yeah.
And obviously it's grown since then, so it's certainly a good platform, I think. But yeah, it's a slightly different market to the current.
Certainly there'll be more Aerofly content to come at some point.
Sounds good. So, with the loss of Flight Sim World and Dovetail Games now essentially not having a Flight Sim team anymore, how does this affect your stance on FSX and 32-bit platforms? And is this something that you maybe start losing in the future and start focusing on P3D and X-Plane?
Yes, I think in time FSX, like previous ones, will start to dwindle off. And people move into prepared and X-Plane. Some people move to both, some people move to one or the other. So I think hopefully in time we'd like to get to the point where we don't have to do that for FSX anymore.
Because obviously the more the P3D version 4 technology moves on, the harder it then becomes to port back to FSX. So at some point the rewards of doing that will just be too small and we'll move on from FSX and the 64-bit platforms only.
You might find some air traffic we release are available for FSX, but maybe not the full feature set that you can get in the P3D version. I think that's true about developers. New things become possible. The FSX one might not be quite as good anymore.
And so, where do you feel right now that the community are going as a whole? So, do you see? So you release products onto both FSX, P3, and X-Plane 11. So, how does that between like different genres, different sales? Like, how do sales impact with each one? Where do you where do you see the community going? Where are they heading to as the main simulator?
Well, I mean, for the first time in maybe ever, X-Plane seems to be neck and neck with the other platforms out.
It's definitely been a big shift towards X-Plane.
Yeah.
I think at the shows we go to, and obviously we can see in our own sales. I mean, we've only been X-Plane for a year, so we don't really have any past data to go on. But certainly very healthy sales in X-Plane. We've seen as good, if not better, sales of some of our GA aircraft in X-Plane that we have in Prepared. So it's certainly not niche simulator anymore. It's definitely a strong competitor.
X-Plane 11 was a turning point.
Yeah, so I think P3D and X-Plane will carry on running in parallel for the foreseeable. I don't really see them one take over the other.
No, and that's certainly been the two platforms we focus on, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a lot of crossover. People do fly both. Plenty of people seem to fly both. So,
yeah, thank you very much.
Prominent face of the community, Matt Davies, next. Today he talks to us both about projectFLY and PostCon, as well as their new add-on marketplace called Sim Markets currently in the works, and also some hints on where their A380 is currently headed. He also managed to drag me in front of the camera for this one, making the format a little different from the rest. Let's see what he has to say today.
Yes, thank you very much for this. Okay, so for those who don't kind of know what projectFLY is, what is projectFLY? What does it bring to the Flight Sim system?
projectFLY is a fancy logbook with a bunch of features that are enhance the logbook experience.
Sounds good. So, projectFLY. So, anyway, so we've done a projectFLY. I believe the PostCon has got the integrating terms right now. So, how are these guys integrate one another? So, how are they integrating? How are they like for customers as well?
So, PostCon will use data from projectFLY to tailor-make your PostCon experience, and it will also allow us to understand the level of competence at which you have as a PostCon user by using the way you fly with projectFLY. It will also integrate with the A380 and also SimStore too. So they're all together. So you've got the distribution channels of SimStore, you've got the flying logbook experience of projectFLY, and then PostCon is a network where you can get control and fly with it.
Okay, sounds good. So, regarding what A380 developments, what is the current progress of it, and at what stage is it at?
So, modelling is in sort of, they call it, I'm not a modeler, but they call it late refinement. So, they've done all the bulk stuff, and now they're going through the sort of, I guess, finesse and figuring it all out. Systems are pretty early on, but it's a modular-based system, so in terms of completion, it's hard to say. But model is definitely ahead of the systems, but not by much.
So when would you like to see a release of the experience? What if you have time for it?
Impossible to say. I mean, I reckon if we get it out in 2019, I'll be impressed, but it's probably like maybe 2020. Because we still got the project, it's a side project. If it was a full-time project, then maybe next year.
So talk about the FSElite model, and your interview will send Laura earlier on. Talk about how you like the same model, P3D, Exhibitor, like essentially airfly model in the future. So how will that system work in the simulator?
So each platform has its own specific model requirements and animation requirements. So as long as the modeler in question knows what to do, then essentially it's just one to the other. And because we code it from a sort of emulation of a 787, an emulation of an A380, we can just move it around, and there's really no issue.
So because like you have it on one platform, what's the number? What's the number?
Yeah, we just create a bridge, make sure that the variables all match up, the flight models imported, all the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of that we need to do. And then it works.
So from the sound of things, like shared cockpit could be like a massive thing in this future. So could it essentially like place like when you share a cockpit with like a really easy stuff, would that be a bit too difficult to mix
We're using a web-based client to share the flight, right? And because of that, having to be able to share a plane with someone that's an X-plane versus someone that's an E3D, we can compensate for that using the server, using the web-based technology. So should in theory be possible to fly an X-plane and you fly the 3D and still share the same cockpit.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing that.
VATSIM have finally revealed a new voice codec at the show, so it no longer sounds like you're talking through a paper bag.
We speak to Simon and Gary about this change, as well as the history of VATSIM voice codecs.
So, thank you very much for doing this with us today. So, first question. Finally, we have seen or even heard evidence of a new voice codec coming onto VATSIM. So how different is the current codec to the previous version, and how long will this be implemented into the full simulator?
So if you want to give it a go, we've got it on a laptop, so you can give it a go in a minute. That's fine. That will answer most of your question.
Oh yes.
But how different is it? Everyone doesn't sound like they're in a paper bag anymore, and you don't have a 1 second delay between talking to each other. That's our main aim.
So what actually goes into developing a codec for voice over VATSIM?
Well, our one actually started off as a cabin interphone simulation for our simulator that we built. We wanted to be able to call the galley. So we actually started off as that, and then figured, how can we actually write a VHF? Why don't we turn this into a VHF simulation? So one thing led to another, and to be honest, what mostly goes into it is to a guy called Mark Barnes, who is an absolute genius, who, before I knew it, had designed a terrain model, a VHF simulation model, and basically all the networking behind it. So we do actually use the standard modern stuff. So basically a lot of our stuff, if you've heard of it, is based on something called 0MQ, which basically solves half of our problems for us.
Okay, so what actually prompted you to make this new voice codec after 7-8 years using the current one? I got it.
So I sat there thinking, well, if I want to sound, basically what happened, as I said, with the cabin internet, one thing led to another, we thought, you know what, why don't we try and make this a codec for VATSIM, and here we are.
Okay, so are there any plans to open the API for third-party users? So for example, like who's online, what data feed you can bring for that? So is it possible to maybe open up an API to allow other developers like work with VATSIM in the simulator, or is this kind of like something you want to kind of control for the long run?
That's what you want to be on behalf of VATSIM, as part of what the development is, we're all up for opening it up and modern technologies.
As far as VATSIM's concerned, yeah, I mean, if we can work with Gary to do that, definitely more people get involved with it.
So we've actually, what's happened is we've ended up working with the guys from VATSIM who are writing the FSD part of the service and the voice service and the data feed. So between us, we've actually managed to write a new data server accidentally whilst doing voice at the same time. So yeah, it's good. The new way of working with VATSIM is actually working really well. Everyone's wide open, we all have a shared GitHub, it's all very open.
Oh yes, I was going to say, so one question you got was, like, do you have any timelines on when there'll be like a public repository such to get public? So like, how public is this? How open is it?
So actually, what we've got is called GeoVR, which is the virtual radio system. The bits that are non-VATSIM specific are actually public and out there now, so it is very wide open. Obviously, there is some stuff from the legacy VATSIM network side of things that we do have to keep in a separate repository, just because the new technology with the new data server and that isn't quite there yet. So that's got to stay private, because you can't really just shove that on the internet and hope for the best.
So last question as well. So what would you do to encourage more use to become like flight controllers? So it can be a fairly tough process to join, and as a result, it means that too few people are shying away from this. What can you do to bring more controllers into the community?
Well, I think like the new voice architecture is going to help us. You can hear the new voice codecs now, how clear it is, you can hear that there. So I think that's going to be a game changer, because that's one of the biggest things that we get is that people don't come to us because they see the voices are very good. So I think this is going to be a real game changer for us. So that's really going to help.
And the funniest thing actually coming out of all of the voice codec testing, as we said, everyone's being really friendly to each other when they're controlling. I think you don't have people stepping on each other and really struggling to hear people. And people are cracking jokes to each other. I don't know what's happened. So hopefully this is the way forward.
And the frequencies are really calm. It's a really calm place to be.
Yeah, very calm.
So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. Cheers. Cheers, Gary.
And last, but certainly not least, we got a chance to speak to FSElite about their own news sites. Today we learn a little more about the history of where they came from, as well as where they are currently going with the release of Directory. Let's interview the interviewee. It's Callum Martin.
Right, so it's Callum from FSElite. Thank you very much for doing this for us.
Very welcome.
So first question. FSElite have been very much a rising star in the flight simulator community, recently making a big name for yourself just over a year ago. So where did it all start, and what was the site's big breakthrough moment?
Good question. So it all started, like you said, 2.5 years ago, and I think the idea was we just wanted to do something a little bit different. I've always been quite passionate about the media side of things. I used to run like really amateur gaming blogs when I was a kid. And flight sim was always something that held my interest, so I kind of wanted to combine the two. Made some cool friends with Jordan and Greg, and we had similar ideas about what kind of news media site we wanted. And then we kind of just put this really basic blog together, did it for a bit of fun, and then when people started to take note of what we were doing, we had lots of people ask to join our team. So, some of the original guys like Dan and Mungo, who are still here with us today, they really helped to grow that team, and for me the important element was to try and get that worldwide coverage, and so we kind of put out some feelers and managed to get a team of 20 people. And you ask about that kind of big moment. I think when we went to Flight SimCon in Connecticut in 2017, we made a big point of kind of really having a representation there, because people hadn't really heard of us or hadn't met us in person, and for us that was the real pushing point to say, oh hey, this is what we do, this is who we are, and I think people appreciated that interaction and stuff that we did. And for us it was important that the community felt part of the event as well. And I think that was the moment where actually people took us a lot more seriously, because they could finally put the website to an actual personality with it as well.
Okay, so how do you say FSElite compares itself with some of the other flight simulator news sites out there that have built themselves up over the last 10 to 20 years? What makes you like the standout, the difference between the others?
So I think the important thing for me with that is we've always wanted to challenge what happened in the past, because we know over the last, like you said, 10, 20 years there's been countless news sites all trying to do the same sort of thing. And yeah, some elements we do similar to other sites, but I think what makes us stand out more is because we have a really universal global team who have very much different passions, very much different skill sets, and we like to kind of bring all that together to make firstly a strong brand. I like how we are kind of a bit more visual compared to some other sites, and the engagement thing. is the most important thing for us. We do a lot of stuff on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Even today we've got a Snapchat filter for the entire community around.
Oh yes.
So just that kind of, those small different engagement things and just pushing the boundaries. And even things like organising events on behalf of developers and stuff. We just want to be a little bit more different and just kind of be a bit more, you know, on the same level as the community rather than think we're above them and telling them all everything and stuff.
Okay, so what are the current plans for your website, and do you have any major expansions in the plans for the future?
So the first thing for the site, and it's been a much featured request, is the speed. So we're working in the background now on kind of the next iteration of FSElite. Haven't got anything to show on that one, but speed is like the dominating driving force for that. But I think the next expansion for us is directory. So we announced that at VATSIM Expo in Vegas. And basically, if you haven't seen it or heard of it, directory is just going to be a global map for you to find any add-ons from X-Plane, Prepared, or Aerofly. And it will literally host everything from freeware to all the like top tier payware as well. So you can type into the search function, say So Jetways, and it will show you every single airport that uses So Jetways in it as well.
Oh, okay. So it's not just going to be like the ICAO code and the airport name, because that's true any like feature that the airport will include as well.
So if you're like, I want a dynamic lighted airport with So Jetways that's under $10, you can literally search to that detail and it will ping you those results. So country, region, you know, you name it, we found a way to kind of get you that airport. And I think what we really like about it is it supports the community, because you're hopefully going to find airports you've never heard of. I certainly did when we were compiling the database. Also for the development side of things as well, they're going to be able to release an airport, but no, it's not going to get lost in a massive mix of news, because people will be searching for it or searching for similar airports, and actually they may discover that really cool, unique airport. Now, I don't know, that is kind of our next big thing, and hopefully we're going to release that in the next couple of weeks to the community to enjoy.
Sounds good. So when it comes to the video contents on your website, how are these made in comparison to other FlightSim news sites? For example, the one this interview will be uploaded to. What's the process that goes into video editing?
So, I'm no video editor. Many of our team don't have the skill or the capability to do that. However, what we do is we look for other YouTubers who have a real passion and enthusiasm for developing videos, and we ask them to join our team as kind of like contributors and stuff. So we've got a couple of guys. We've got FlightSim Deck, we've got Oz Flight Simmer, we've got Q8 Pilot, we've got a new guy called Ronnie, and all of them kind of have their speciality or, you know, their favourite type of flying, and they will produce kind of videos whatever they think is cool or they think will be beneficial for the community, and then they upload it through our channel, and then we promote them and they promote us, and it's like a real cool like crossover between what we do. And the way we see it, the reason we like it very much is because you get different personalities in the video and also different experiences as well.
So how does this differ from that video project you guys started last year, but I don't think it really took off as much as you guys expected it?
Sorry,
the video project you did last year where you had a few guys come in with the videos. How's it? I forget the name of it.
The featured YouTube community.
That's it.
So the idea behind that, and it's still something I want to do more of, is so these guys, those FlightSim or FlightSim Deck, blah blah blah, they produce content for the FSElite channel. FlightSim, the featured YouTube community, was purely a new platform for video makers to use us as a way to share that with the community. So they weren't ever going to produce for us, but we wanted to say, hey, you produce some cool stuff. Actually, a lot of your stuff doesn't really rank that high in YouTube because maybe you're not a huge 80k subscriber kind of guy, but it was just that way to promote, because we know Facebook groups, they don't necessarily allow this kind of self-promotion side of things.
Yeah.
But actually, I very much believe if we self-promote to an extent some good quality stuff, then the community gets to experience a much wider berth of awesome content. And
and that was what Featured YouTube Community was about. And we're going to develop that. And you asked about the site earlier,
yes.
about what we're going to do. And that is going to become, instead of kind of here, it's going to become much more integrated with what we do, and also with directory in the future.
So you guys will bring it back in the future?
In a big way.
Sounds good, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the show.
And finally, we can bring our little interview saga to an end for another year. A very fun day out with those in the flight simulating community, and a great day to see the progress of so many products due to release. For me, however, as was last year, it's a 2-hour train back to London and a return to obscurity for another year. See you next time.
At the Flight Sim exhibition here, it's a great weekend. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Marty. I do marketing for X-Plane and tell you about some of the events that are coming up and we'll be participating in. We'll be at the Lelystad show in Holland. That takes place on November I believe it's the 5th and 6th, it's the weekend of November of this year. Then in April of next year, we will be at the Aerosoft booth at the Friedrichshafen, Germany show, which is on Bodensee in southern Germany. And the big show next year in the US will be the Flight Sim Expo, which takes place in June. I don't think we have a date yet, but it'll be in Orlando, Florida. So I hope you can join us at these events. We'll be showing X-Plane, and we'll be showing X-Plane in VR. We're doing that here at the show, and we've gotten an absolutely tremendous response from our customers.